protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's JOEB and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on Triple B and JOEB and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and JOEB. Rock on, get your morality. Triple B and JOEB and Triple B, baby. Triple B and JOEB. Rock on, get your morality. We're coming in. Only seeking the truth. About JFK. It's a long-going podcast. And here we go.
And here we go.
And here we go indeed. We might be a little late, but we are here. This is episode 294. It's all about that he said, she said, you know what? You know what, Joe.
I do.
Anyway, welcome, everyone. We're happy you joined us today and you were able to. I know it's a little bit different, but due to some Lemony Snicket's type series of unfortunate events, I was not able to go live Friday night, nor was I able to communicate. So, that being said, and problems being fixed, we are here now with you today. So, to all those out there, I apologize sincerely for the slight delay in programming, but we are here, back in full effect. Hallelujah. Praise Jeebus. Amen. Anyway, Joe, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well, and just want to say Happy Father's Day, sir.
Ah, yes.
And Happy Father's Day to all the fathers in our chat and who are subscribed and who watch our show. And we appreciate all of you.
Happy Father's Day. To one and all, I'm blessed to be twice a father, I guess. Yeah, it's awesome. And, wouldn't trade it for the world. And I believe Joe would like to share with everyone a picture to celebrate his, Father's Day.
Yeah, I just thought it would
give
be
some
fun.
tribute to his father.
Yeah, I'm not going to say much.
My father's no longer with us, so happy Father's Day in heaven, sir.
Yes, thank you for giving the Triple B to us. Which one am I, Rob?
I guessed wrong at the beginning, but I know that your father had very good taste in football teams.
You know what? That's really funny because I thought of that when I was thinking of sharing this picture. I thought it'd be funny. He actually was working as a congressional aide at that point in D.C., which I think explains.
Oh, it was probably a free T-shirt then.
Yeah. Is that a V-neck? That's pretty cool.
It is a V-neck.
Wow.
I thought it was like a jersey type thing, but it's not a jersey. It's a old school V-neck T-shirt.
They don't make them like they used to, huh? Merch. So, yeah, that is me.
Rocking the sweet mustache.
The little Joe B, yes. And he still has that mustache like a lot of people everywhere. And happy.
And if you would like to see Joe Borelli with a sweet mustache, comment in the comment section below, and he will hone it in for you next week. It will be live and in person for one show only. So make sure you hit him with the comments. We get at least 10 comments that say mustache. He's going to have to do it.
Deep State Joe.
Yes, your true roots have been exposed.
Yes. Fuck.
I know. And since it's not Friday, we can't have a fun fact Friday. But I do have something that I'd like. It's a minute and 15 seconds that I would like everyone to take heed and just listen very carefully because it's very true. And, we get caught up in small daily things all the time. And this is just a reminder to you about what life is So here you go. I hope you enjoy. I hope this works. I hope you can hear it.
Have you ever thought about this? In 100 years, so like 21, 23, we will all be buried with our families and friends. Strangers will live in our homes that we worked so hard to build, and someone else will own everything we have today. Most of our possessions will be given away or thrown out and destroyed, including the car that we spent a fortune on and will probably be scrapped. Our descendants will hardly know who we are, nor will they remember us. I mean, how many of us know who our grandfather's father was? After we die, we will be remembered for a few more years, and then we're just a portrait on someone's wall. And a few decades later, our history, photos, and deeds disappear into history's oblivion. We won't even be memories. If we pause one day to analyze these questions, perhaps we would understand how pointless it is for us to worry about 95% of the things that consume our minds daily. If we could only think about this, surely our approaches, our thoughts would change and we would do things differently. Perhaps we would feel more free to enjoy ourselves and our lives that we're living. And remember the saying, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes being upset by it.
Very true, sir. Very true.
Yeah. So that's your daily reminder. Don't sweat the small stuff, folks, because it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. Just enjoy your life right now. Because like she said, like within 100 years, you'll be long forgotten. Nothing you have will be around. You won't even be a memory. So take that for what it's worth and enjoy your lives, people. And we're glad that you're enjoying it right now here with us, because this is what we enjoy doing is, taking a little bit of time out of our busy weeks and hanging out with you guys and talking a little JFKA.
Highlight of my week, that's for sure. And I think that's a good segue because we have to thank Mr. John Naylor, who also gave a super chat on Friday as well. So thank you for both of those, John. And of course,
yes, bless you.
Of course, hi to everyone in the chat. Garden and Guns, No True Flags, Paul, PSV Odyssey, Tiny Dancer, of course, Sally. That's me. And buongiorno. See, I got that one. Capiche is a very hard word to read when you're like in it thinking about something else. I'm still embarrassed by that one. So, and we only got a couple of mustaches, so I think
the show's not over, and this will be the live chat will be replayed.
Hi, yes, hi Scott, and thank you, Tiny Dancer. You are the best. Yeah, I believe.
We'll see how handsome he looks in a mustache.
Well,
hopefully next week.
The first show we did, I had a beard because I had a beard at Lancer. That's for sure. I think the one we did on the 22nd. And, it's funny because this start time, I think we did a couple Sunday mornings early on, too.
We did. Or was it Saturday mornings? I don't know. I can't remember.
I think we did both.
Yeah, probably. Before we settled on Friday evenings being the best. But anyway, it's Sunday and it's Father's Day, and we're glad you guys are here hanging out. So let's get right into it, Joe. Without further ado.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is a she said, because she said her name is Mary Woodward. Now, have you ever heard the name, Joe, Mary Woodward, as a Dealey Plaza witness?
To be honest, no.
And neither had I before I came across this. So I came across something in an old Deep Politics Quarterly magazine written by Jan Stevens concerning Mary Woodward. Okay, so Dealey Plaza eyewitness Mary Woodward was a reporter for the Dallas Morning News in 1963 for the Women's News page, because they didn't get to write about anything other than women's news back in 1963, apparently. Along with her co-workers Anna Donaldson, Aurelia Alonso, and Margaret Brown, She took a position on the north side of Elm Street near where Bill and Gail Newman were standing and Emmett Hudson by the grassy knoll there to view the President Kennedy's motorcade. Although she was not called to testify before the Warren Commission, she did give a deposition to the FBI as recorded by Special Agents David Berry and Henry Oliver on December 6th. So this is a female witness standing right near Bill and Gail Newman, not called to the Warren Commission like Bill and Gail Newman. And these are some of the people that are closest to the limousine at the time of the shots, Joe. So right after the assassination, Mary wrote her account of the slaying for her paper, which appeared in the November 23rd edition. Woodward said there was a horrible, ear-shattering noise coming from behind us and a little to the right. Okay? So picture yourself as Mary Woodward standing facing the street, not Bill and Gail Newman are to her right. Okay. So what area of the park there is behind her and to the right, Joe?
That would be the picket fence, of course.
Yes, the grassy knoll area. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And Rob,
yes.
is that kind of near where we were talking about the puddles could have possibly been pools of blood, and that like steps up there? Because Newman would have been on your right still, right?
No, Newman wasn't that far down.
Okay.
And they were closer to the road.
Got it.
The pool of blood was like up at the top of the steps area.
Got it. Thank you.
So attempting to clarify, stating that this was above her head and possibly behind her. Woodward's perceptions speak for themselves and thus place a shot from the knoll area. Therefore, it's hard to fathom why Bureau agents would write this up as possibly behind her. In 1988, Woodward was interviewed for the Nigel Turner documentary, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, and confirmed her story once again, telling how, after witnessing the assassination, she went back to her newspaper office, highly agitated and obviously quite upset. Let's look at her account as she told it to Turner's people. She said, "They first of all took me to the office nurse and had me have a tranquilizer because they thought I was somewhat hysterical. I'm a hysterical female, Joe. I need a tranquilizer. Somebody shut this woman up. Give her a shot."
So she got it on to the 22nd?
Yeah, she went back to the newspaper office and she was, I don't know, she was highly upset. So they tranked her.
Who knew the newspaper had those kind of reserves?
Hey, these women get out of hand in 1963, Joe. You got to have something on hand. You know.
Yeah.
I think I was behaving quite rationally under the circumstances, she said. But anyhow, I then sat down and wrote the story while she's tranked, and actually had completed the story before the news was absolutely confirmed that he was even dead. So the story was absolutely my own impressions. It was not from anything anyone had said or what I had read or heard. Some things I have often said I would hate to swear before a court of law or before God. But one thing I am totally positive of in my own mind is how many shots there were. And there were 3 shots. The second 2 were immediate, and it was almost as if one were an echo of the other. They came so quickly together. The sound of one did not cease until the second shot. With the second and third shots, I did see the president being hit. I literally saw his head explode. So I have felt the shots had come, as I wrote in the article, from behind me and to my right, which have been in the direction of the grassy knoll and the railroad overpass. Turner then explains that Woodward's account was pulled from the paper since it didn't square with the developing official version. She goes on to say that civic leaders, responsible people, whether it be the mayor or the managing editor of the paper, almost felt it a responsibility to kind of not rock the boat, perhaps. The neat answer was that the version that came to be the most widely accepted, that there were 3 shots and they had all come from the book depository and they were all fired by Lee Harvey Oswald. From Woodward's own remarks in 1988, we can see that she still believed the shots came from the knoll or the overpass area, and that those, quote, responsible felt that the Lone Nut story had to be put forward no matter what. So far, so good. So what happened 5 years later that made Mary Woodward, now Pillsworth, change her story, recant the conclusions made to a nationwide cable TV audience, and turn around to support the official lone assassin version? So what happened, Joe, is she's been saying all this stuff for, at the time, 25 years. Then all of a sudden, she flips the script. On November 21st, 1993, a conference called the Reporters Remember, November 22nd, 1963, was held at the Southern Methodist University, SMU. Many of the surviving reporters and newsmen who were on the spot during the tragedy in Dallas were on hand to give their recollections, do some glad handing, and express mutual admiration for their fellow media cohorts. Rather than running the risk of putting her remarks out of context, let's look at Mary Woodward's pertinent statements on the assassination directly, as transcribed from a videotape of the conference presented on C-SPAN at the time. We stationed ourselves just down from the schoolbook depository and waited for the parade to come by. Now, this is what she's saying in 93 now.
Okay.
As we were chatting and as we were talking, I looked up at the grassy knoll and I said to my friends, I said, that's a very dangerous looking spot to me. It must be there must be a lot of security up there because it looks like a perfect spot if someone wanted to do something. Now, this is a strange statement and one that she had not alluded to making at any other time before, but it appears to have a purpose to serve, as we will see later. And then the motorcade came along and I couldn't believe it. Finally, I'm going to see Jacqueline Kennedy. And she's looking in the other direction. So I yelled, "Please look this way. Look at me."
A lot of women were there for Jackie.
Yeah. And they looked right at us. And at that very moment, I heard a very loud noise. And I wasn't sure what it was at that point. And I turned to my friends and asked, "What was that? Is some jerk shooting off firecrackers?" And then I heard the second one. And this time I knew what had happened because I saw the president's motion. And then the third shot came very, very quickly on top of the second one. And at that time I saw his head blow up. And I very well knew what had happened at that point. She then briefly recalls that the first shot definitely did not hit JFK. I have never wavered on that. And how amazingly slow the reactions of the Secret Service were. She then recounts how she was received back at the Dallas Morning News when she said that the president had been killed. It seems that her co-workers and fellow supporters were unwilling to support me on that. They were saying, well, something happened. He's been shot, but nobody was willing to say they killed him. But I kept insisting, oh, he's dead. I know he's dead. Or else I hope he's dead because his head's blown clean apart. She then repeats how she wrote the story, narrates the sequence of the shots, the same basic accounts she gave Nigel Turner, and says, in retrospect, I think I wrote it correctly after rereading it before the 1993 conference. Now here's where the trouble begins. Let's pick it up a bit later in Miss Woodward's speech to her colleagues. She says, the only thing that I guess I got myself in a little bit of controversy about, I said the shots appeared to have come from behind me and to my right. And I did say seemed to. I didn't say they did come from that direction. Because first of all, I have very great difficulty discerning the direction of sounds anyway. I'm the kind of person on the freeway, when I hear a siren, I panic because I don't know where it's coming from. And secondly, I had just spoken to my friends prior to the event, suggesting that the grassy knoll would be the perfect spot for an assassin. So I said it was somewhat like Somewhat like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's when it happened. I naturally expected it to have come from where I had predicted it would come from. So in reality, I do believe they came from the school book depository building. So I get a little upset when I get put into this other crazy column. Yeah.
Is that our column, Rob?
Apparently so. You know, it's crazy conspiracy theorist, you know. To complicate the shifting Woodward credibility, author Walt Brown reports in his new book, Treachery in Dallas, that he, along with George Michael Evick and Dick Russell, had dinner with Mary Woodward on November 22nd, 1992, and that she nodded in the affirmative when asked if the knoll was the source of the shots. So why would she give such a cock and bull story later at the reporters' conference? Could it be that she was somehow pressured to change her tune? Could it be apparent pressures of speaking before her media colleagues is the problem? A solid fortress against any conspiracy stories? Folks who couldn't face the embarrassment of being wrong after about a lone gunman all these years? So that is the somewhat bizarre and changing testimony of Mary Woodward, Joe. I believe, and this is just Big Bad Bob's own personal opinion here, that nobody ever planned on being at this conference with all these fellow newspaper people, you know, some 30 years after the fact. And that upon realizing that her story didn't jive with anybody else's from the official story, from these newspaper people and news people, that she didn't want to seem like the odd duck, like the
crazy one, right?
The crazy one. So then she changed her story. What do you think?
Okay, so I made a couple of notes here. And one of the questions I had, Scott asked, since her story was pulled, was it ever available to read? I don't believe so, based on what you read. Right? Dallas Morning News women's column.
No True Flag say her story was changed and printed back in 1963. So I think it was pulled, changed, and then printed the next day. Because I think at the time she had wrote that he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
But none of that had been confirmed yet. So they didn't want to run it.
I think it makes sense because, and this, you said it was in 93, this conference?
Yeah.
So it's kind of after the JFK movie by a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Early 90s. So it is a weird time to kind of change the story. I think that your guess is probably the most plausible one, which is, you know, when talking and being with other news reporters, colleagues, anchors, other people in media, there is a lot of pressure that comes with that. You know, just think.
Yeah, to go with the official story.
Right. How many of those people were mockingbirds? You know, I'm guessing a number of them. I don't know. I'm not going to put a number on it. But listen, you want to be accepted by your peers. I think that's a normal human trait, right? I think that's probably the most logical thing that happened, that she just changed her story to not rock the boat anymore. But you said she did talk in with the Men Who Killed Kennedy?
Yeah.
The series. Okay.
Yeah.
The 10-part series, of course. And
she
that was
didn't
what,
want to be like the
70s, 80s?
Alexander Jones instead of Alex Jones at the time in the media.
Do you know when the Men Who Killed Kennedy came out? Like ballpark?
88.
88. Okay. So fine. Okay. That's, maybe she got a lot of blowback from her peers and therefore kind of changed it.
Yeah. She didn't want to be ostracized and made to feel like a loony bin if that was the only perspective that she had, but she had every right to have that perspective. She was there, boots on the ground in Dealey Plaza, 15 feet away from the motorcade when JFK was killed.
Yeah, and they must
Nobody
have
else
known.
was from the news. You know,
That's true,
so
and
she should have stuck by her guns and stuck to her story and told everybody else to screw off.
right, like the Newmans kind of stuck to their story the whole time, right?
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, and they obviously weren't called either, so there's a little pattern there. But it is a weird time for her to change her story in '93, but um, considering the where she was speaking, it makes sense. And one other note I wrote down, I think she said, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, uh, the mayor and the editor wanted to change the story. That's what I wrote down. So we were talking about Earl Cabell there. Cabell?
Yeah, he would have been the mayor at the time. Yeah.
That's an interesting person to cite as having didn't want to upset. I forgot the exact wording of it, but right?
Well, back then mayors used to have a lot of pull. Like nowadays, mayors don't really do nothing, or or have a lot of pull. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, true.
But back then, they were big
Well, it
swinging
depends on the
D's.
city, I think. Right?
Well, I mean, Jesse Curry's on the phone with Cabell at the time of the assassination in the lead car.
I think there's I always put much more stock into early immediate statements. I'm not sure what's on the record from her in '63, if there's any interviews or documents, but
Well, apparently there's an FBI document, interview where she said that. So
okay.
I haven't come across it.
Okay. Well, that's what I put the most stock in, right? So
That's right. All right, Joe, you're up with the he said. He said.
he
She
said,
said.
he said, and I'm gonna give. Actually, let's say hi to one or two more people. Bungled.
Yes.
Did we say hi to him earlier? I can't remember. I don't think so. Hi, Bungled. Good morning, Paula. And who else was it? I saw Old
Scott.
Slacker and South to West. Thank you all for joining us on this Father's Day morning. So, chat and Alpha
Mike.
66. That was the other person. Of course. Alpha 66. Who was the mayor of Dallas today? Do you know this? I don't know. I'm asking.
He should know. But
I
you
know.
put him on the spot.
I know. Well, he'll respect that. And to
How you
put
might
everyone,
know.
to put other people on the spot in the chat, who is familiar with Raymond Roca, who is what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today. Not a common name when you think of CIA, high-end CIA agents that are involved and talked about in the assassination. He probably wouldn't make it on the top 10 in like a tabloid list, right? Of like who the general public thing, you'd have like E. Howard Hunt, like things like that, right? So in doing some preparation for the show, I was learning a lot about him, and he came up, ironically enough, in our Martin show. And let me pull this now. We should share it. And I'm going to get into that because what is a TLG show if it doesn't? We don't bring it back to the Martins. And look at that handsome face on the right, not so much.
I respect the chin beard, the great chin beard. I could probably look like that if I shaved everything but that and had hair.
He is a very interesting character, and he was the deputy chief of counterintelligence and research and analysis staff under James Jesus Angleton when he was later Angleton's deputy, and he had even, Rob, served in the OSS during World War II. And I found this not on the JFK site, but this isn't from the Bad Persons of Germany of that time, War Crimes Disclosure Act. And from Raymond Roca to James Angleton in February 1945. And they worked together in Italy, in Rome specifically. So I have a
Worked
couple
together
of,
their entire professional careers.
yes, until the week, as we'll see later, that Angleton was fired in 1974 on Christmas Eve. Ray Roca was given the chance to either transfer or resign, transfer to another part of the agency, and he chose to resign. So that is some loyalty, Rob.
That is loyalty.
So I have three little things I'm going to read quickly from
Real
three.
quick before you do,
Yeah, sure.
let me shout out a happy Father's Day to Aunt Udine, because she's an aunt, a mother, and a father to all her children.
Thank you.
So pour out some Lone Star, Claude, for Aunt Udine. What's up, Greg? I see you, my buddy Greg,
Yes.
in the house.
Hello, Greg. So I'm going to read. I have three different little snippets that kind of summarize Ray Roca, and it's from three people that are very different, and it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to put back up that image of him there.
Raymond Roca.
And the first is going to come from the book Cold Warrior, James Jesus Angleton, the CIA's master spy hunter, in 1991, author Tom Mangold. And this is on Spartacus as well. To understand Angleton and his research mythology, one must know a little about the man closest to him throughout his working life. That man was Raymond Roca, Angleton's former Rome OSS colleague, who led the effort to reconstruct the past as head of the staff's new research and analysis department. Roca's friends say he was well suited for the job. He had an excellent memory and was considered a plodding, thorough scholar who usually provided Angleton with more detail than needed. Roca was...
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Was he kind of like Clyde Tolson was to J. Edgar Hoover?
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great analogy, actually.
Well, yeah, more than one facet.
I don't know about that facet.
Okay, just throwing it out there.
I can't confirm.
You don't get that kind of loyalty. Doesn't happen very often, bro.
That is true. That is true.
Unless there's some love. If you know what
there
I'm
was some
saying.
love. I don't know if it's that type of love. So critics of Angleton's mythology said that both he and Roca wasted enormous quantities of time studying the gospels of pre-war Soviet intelligence operations. I'm going to come back to that, Rob. At the very moment, the KGB had shifted the style and emphasis of its operations against the West. And that's just three paragraphs from Mr. Tom Mangold's book, Cold Warrior, James Jesus Angleton. And the next person, it's an interesting take. Edward J. Epstein, Rob, on his blog, or his former blog, because I think he's passed, has a few paragraphs about Angleton too. And that's very interesting because you kind of think of Epstein as a possible mockingbird. Would you agree with that, Rob?
That may be taken a little too far.
Okay. I'm not sure.
He did do some good work back in the 60s.
Right. That's why I said possible. I don't know. The Rock, as Angleton called Ray Roca, was a tall, bearded man in his early 60s who shuffled around with the same slight stoop as Angleton's. We'll see that stoop in a little bit.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, we will see that stoop shortly.
Now.
Even though he was recovering from a serious heart operation, he agreed to see me, that's Edward Epstein, on Angleton's recommendation, which is interesting because Angleton always was known for kind of meeting with everyone who wanted to meet with him, right? In terms of like reporters, researchers. I'm sorry, I'm not looking.
It says if the office is rocking, don't come a knocking. I love it.
You should have used that type of thing for a title. So let's see. He served under Angleton almost his entire career in intelligence, first employed by Angleton in the OSS at the end of World War II, like we showed you, in Italy to keep track of fragmentary intelligence reports taken from German, Italian, and Vatican archives. Clues to who did what during the war would prove invaluable in the post-war in determining who were the targets of blackmail and coercion. Then he followed Angleton to the CIA. When Angleton organized his counterintelligence staff, he became his head of research. He took charge of what Angleton called the serials, like serial number, not cereal to breakfast. The pieces of information left over from previous cases, which might someday fit into other jigsaw puzzles. When Angleton was fired from the CIA in January 75, he was also let go. I heard Christmas Day, but that's only a week or two difference either way.
Merry Christmas, you're fired.
It's funny because as we'll see, the reporters were like, maybe not the best time to say this, but Merry Christmas, you just got fired. Let's see. This is interesting too. Roca explained that the intelligence business defectors were defined as either bona fide or dispatched, depending on who controlled their actions. If a defector chose to change sides, and by doing so must sincerely put himself under the control of American intelligence, he was bona fide. If a defector only pretended to change sides and remained under control of the KGB or another hostile intelligence service, he was, quote, dispatched. When Nosenko was thought to be a dispatched defector, they get in a lot of stuff about Nosenko and Golitsyn, and that is a whole another episode. And there are much more smarter people who have done a lot of research on that, so I'm not really going to go into that. And that would be John Newman, of course, among others. They were talking about Oswald.
I think Angleton really wanted to break Nosenko.
Yep.
But I think it ended up backfiring.
Yeah, so he would have thought Nosenko would have been dispatched, and I think Golitsyn would have been bona fide, I believe.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So last thing, Edward Epstein says, is there any evidence that Oswald disinformation was cooked up by the KGB? And Roca lit his pipe, and he shook his head. Now you're talking about operational data. I was never involved in that. I thought you just wanted a historical perspective. And Edward Epstein says it was clear the seminar of trust was over. And that was the end of his little blog on Mr. Ray Roca. Interesting little picture we're getting here, right?
Yeah, he sounds like a very company man, sir.
Oh, yeah, that's probably an understatement. And now we are going to read a little from friend of the show's website, Two Princes and a King, Carmine Salvestano, of course. And we actually owe him an email, Rob. But he wrote, serving during World War II to serve as an Italian broadcast analyst, Raymond's work drew the attention of the OSS, and Roca joined the OSS Counter-Espionage Division X2 and was sent to Italy under the direction of James Angleton. He would continue serving the OSS Descendant Group, the Strategic Services Unit under military cover. Graduated from the National War College, 55, same year, joined the CIA's Directorate of Plans as chief of its counterintelligence research and analysis group to undertake studies, perform research, and train agents. He was on the ground here. And serving once more under Angleton, he was responsible for the development of some Russian and Soviet bloc defectors, encountering any enemy disinformation campaigns. Amidst the 1960s, counterintelligence staff was consumed with seeking internal agency traitors, that'd be the mole hunt, and launched a hunt for penetration agents referred to as moles. By 1969, Roca became deputy chief of counterintelligence staff, but Angleton's hunt for traitors had spun out of control with Nasenko's exoneration. So you're right, Rob. Years of increasingly disastrous agency secrets being leaked culminated in a media article pushing this director of Central Intelligence, William Colby, to remove Angleton and reassign his lead staff members, which was, of course, Ray Roca. Angleton met with Roca and others, and the counterintelligence chief was forced out of his position to address the division's future, and Roca alluded to retirement if he was transferred, which, of course, he did. And he retired in 1964. Yep.
Didn't William Colby, the guy who fired Jesus and Angleton, didn't he meet a mysterious, untimely demise?
He did.
Huh. Interesting.
A very
saying. I mean,
very sus.
It's a little sus.
Oh, very sus. Yes.
A little sus. And yeah, Carmine will be on soon.
Yes.
Within the month.
Yes, sir.
Can't narrow it down anymore for you right in a second, but yeah.
Yeah.
Within 30 days.
For sure.
Allegedly.
Sure. Allegedly. And so that is Carmine's little recap of that. And so I was reading about him, and I heard about his HSCA secret deposition, but I couldn't find it. But then at the bottom of the article, that is twoprincesandaking.com, and you could just search Ray Roca. It's, I believe, the third result that comes up, which is kind of cool. Because usually the show we did with him last was shadow banned like crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, people don't like document.
We're not scared to have him on.
No. They don't like actual document researchers. That makes sense. And so there's a 283-page interview of this HSCA testimony. How much of it do you think I read, Rob?
Well, it would be unfair of me to answer this question, seeing as how I know.
I know, I told you.
How much you read, and I don't know why you read that much, because I read about 10 pages of it, and I was like, this guy ain't saying nothing, man. No point in reading this shit.
I don't know why I did either, to be fair. Just, I guess, because I was looking for little tidbits. And I found a couple I'm going to share with you. And again, you can go to Carmine's site to get he has a link to the 283 pages of this interview. So I jumped around a little here. This guy Goldsmith is questioning Mr. Ray Roca, and he asks, informally, was the counterintelligence staff responsible for coordinating the CIA's investigation? They're talking about the Warren Commission here. This is where I wonder about the use of that term. That is, whatever we had done, whatever we were to do or did to assist the Warren Commission, focused in the staff, in the CI staff, in the CI staff. At the time, who was in charge of the counterintelligence staff? Mr. Angleton, and Mr. Hunt was his deputy. Now, don't get too excited, folks, because Mr. Goldsmith asked, was that Mr. E. Howard Hunt? No. For the record, who is Mr. Hunt? Mr. Hunt was Mr. James Hunt, a totally different person in counterintelligence.
Yes, Mike's brother.
Mike's brother?
Yeah.
So one thing I thought of when I was reading this, because you remember, of course, Oswald wrote that letter to, we think it was Mr. Hunt. It was also theorized it could be John Hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if it was this guy in counterintelligence? He dealt with defectors, or his group did.
Yeah.
I don't know. Complete speculation there. 100% speculation. But
and to Paula's point here.
Sure, I might look at the comments for a second.
I wonder why they waited. Well, it would seem kind of obvious if they would have offed him so quickly after getting canned. And I'm not saying, Angleton and Roca did it, but somebody loyal to them could have gave him a receipt, many years later, so he could enjoy, the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Just saying, maybe. maybe.
Yeah, and I think Angleton was dead at that time, 20 years after the HSCA.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure Roca was too.
I think Roca was as well. I think it was
But
90
you got to
sometime.
figure there was other people in this
Oh
section.
yeah,
There was
the
that would have been
mindset,
loyal to these guys.
the old cows, right, of the
Yeah,
CIA, or that old way of thinking, right?
and Angleton could have said, "Hey, look, don't do it tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, but make sure this son of a bitch pays for it."
Yeah, I mean, kind of like mafia doesn't really forget, right?
That's right.
They'll smile and nod and get you when you're least expecting it.
And smacked with an oar in your face.
Yeah. So now we're jumping to some of the anti-Castro Cuban assassination plots. Mr. Goldsmith asked him about more emphasis. Would you have given more focus, more emphasis to the possibility of a Cuban responsibility for the assassination of JFK? I would have done it anyway, in the view of the fact that he was in touch with the Cubans. Okay. However, earlier when we asked you, it would have simply intensified that interest. The answer to your question is yes. He's like a lawyer the way he answers these questions. It was extremely frustrating to read 200 pages of this. I guess I was just kind of looking for any diamond in the rough type of thing. When did you first, and this is a complete lie, Rob, this is ridiculous. Bottom right, when did you first learn from an agency source, if ever, that the agency had been involved in anti-Castro assassination plots? That would have been the Mafia CIA assassination plots on Castro. Very late. I can't attach an exact date to it. Of course you can't. Did you know of the anti-Castro assassination plots at the time this letter was reviewed by you? In other words, they're showing them documents here. In other words, April 75. So like close to 15, more than 10 years after these assassination plots are going down, he goes, no, I still don't know of them. And this was, yeah, this is the number 2 in counterintelligence. Like, get out of here.
You didn't, buddy.
This is July 17th, 78. So that's about 3 years after the document they were referring to. And one little note I forgot. You know the testimony is going to be super classified when after they do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth thing? First question after that, off the record. It's like, wow. And all right, next here. Now we're getting to Mexico City. Now, if we were to reconstruct Oswald's visits to the Cuban and Russian embassies, that's what I did in that memo, Roca says. Well, we're going to get a hold of that memo, I assure you. The agency at this time has not made it available to us. So they don't have the memo they're referring to on Mexico City in 1978. They still don't have it. But if we were to reconstruct his visits, he would, this is Goldsmith, we would see he made visits not of the Soviet embassy, but the Cuban embassy as well. I cannot recall that detail, but that too would be taken care of, Roca says. And bear in mind that these were different implements. These were different, and they had different problems in management. As I say, I'm telling you only what I know by hearsay. Here he is using another legal term to be like, the people who were there would be the ones who have to explain. So his defense is, I wasn't in Mexico City. Ask the people who were, right? Did it strike you unusual that Oswald was able to visit the embassies a total of at least five or six times without ever being photographed? Mr. Roca says, no, not one bit. Not one bit. Guys, Edward Epstein is right. Guys are rock. I've been in the field. I've been in the field 20 years, Roca says, and anyone who trusts machines and machine coverage is just placing his reliance on a false device. Okay, so remember I mentioned earlier I was going to get back to the whole these two guys, Angleton and Roca, are stuck in like 30 years ago spycraft tactics. This is what I'm kind of referring to. It came up again because, obviously Angleton was fooled by Philby, by possibly Bruce Sully. I mean, he was his boss or above him in Office of Security, but
Nisenko.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what were they right about? And I think they might have been fooled in Mexico City and possibly poison pilled by using Oswald as the person, knowing that they would have to cover up a lot of him.
Thank
So-
you, Red. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Red Phillips. So he's in Mexico City, which he was involved in terms of the documents, and defectors obviously would fall right in his wheelhouse. He didn't say much about, but he said I wasn't there, right? And now we're getting into Oswald's 201
Well, I think
file.
it's interesting that he's calling a coverage camera a false device. What's that alluding to? That the camera coverage was fake?
No, machines, using machines as in cameras or recorders or something, I think, is all not as good as human intelligence. I think that's what he's saying.
I don't know.
I think he's kind of referring to the human intelligence aspect being superior than the machine intelligence aspect. That's what I grasped from it. So one more little thing here. And this is on Oswald's. For example, let's see. Why would Oswald's file have been restricted? Roca says, my impression would be that this would be restricted in order to assure knowledge in SIG in this as one of a category of files involving American defectors. They would want to know in the event anyone else developed information or expressed an interest of any kind. For example, Lee Harvey Oswald file was restricted when it was taken over by research and analysis when it was given to me. Goldman says, so that if anyone, and Roca cuts him off, so that if anyone came in and checked that file, you would know about it, says Goldsmith. I would know immediately who it was. So that's interesting. Anyone who requested Oswald's 201 file would get flagged by Roca, right? Not necessarily Angleton himself, because this guy was really on the working level. Last thing, I would like you to review a document, this top right, marked CI number, blah, blah, blah. Who gave it to, he puts a document in front of Roca. Roca's like, who gave it to me? So he's kind of just being evasive. Have you had a chance to read this? Oh, yes, Roca says. The machine's listing of documents. I just want to skip to this part. 37 documents that should be in the 201 file are not available. This total is made up. I cut off. Do you remember receiving this memorandum? Of course, Roca says no, and that's not of any particular import. And essentially, he's lying about Oswald's 201 file as well. So, very, not a lot given by Roca here, but there's still some pages I have to read, and this guy is just
Agency
I think
through and through, old school
company man.
He was not giving up the goat on his watch, that's for sure.
No, the guy who
of course, Angleton didn't either to the HSCA,
right.
But
so
respect.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that Ray Roca came up in our Martin journey, Rob. I know you know what I'm referring to. And that is the document that you and I found in April 2020. It was like May, but it was released in April in the new releases that we presented on at Lancer. And this is, of course, the letter recommending Miss James Herbert Martin to what we think is Lee Wingren, but we're not sure. But what we're going to focus on is the R signed at the bottom of the page. And essentially what this article says and what the letter says, and not your typical wife, wire intercept. I think the case could be made either way. Something about Castro. It's hard to make out, so I'm not going to go into Castro wife and dangle. But you and I, Rob, had wondered if this was, we had said at Lancer that this was B. D. Felice, because his B here looks like an R, right? And being that
there's a better examples of the B. D. Felice signature that looks more like an R than this one.
There is. I didn't get that one. I'm sorry.
Yes,
You're right. Yes. And the reason we thought that is because a letter of recommendation and an extension of an oral contract by the CIA to the wife of the person Marina moved in with, we thought the director of he would fall under the director of personnel.
Yeah, if
But
they're
what if-
recommending a hire, yes,
Right.
or an
But
extension
what
of
if
a
it-
contract.
What if it was Ray Roca who wrote this letter as the R here? Let me hold on. And if you remember, Bill Simpich was the one when we were messaging him about that told you were messaging him, that he believed it was from Roca to Lee Wingren.
I'm just not seeing, at least the bottom one doesn't look at all like the R.
Any of his R's. Yeah.
The one above it,
It's hard. I mean, so there's not
really.
many.
I mean, because that's a hell of a slant on the one on the left, at the bottom of the letter. That's a very slanted R.
Yeah.
Slanted to the right, and I don't see that in either one of Roca's signatures.
More in the middle one, I think. But so I searched for a lot of Ray Roca documents, and there's not that many. These were two of the of documents he signed. So,
I mean, the two alleged Roca signatures don't look anything alike.
Right.
To me.
But he's signing this. This is like an internal letter to a friend, right, within the CIA, that doesn't even have to write his signature because he knows it. The person who's receiving the letter knows who it's coming from, right? Yeah. He only needs to put one letter, I think. So very interesting. We're not saying it either way. We're just theorizing here. And I, like you, thought DeFelice, and there was a better signature. Maybe I'll find that for next one. But I think counterintelligence, Ray Roca, possibility if you're talking about counterintelligence and defectors and what Marina was, right? Because that's what it would have been for, right? Oswald was dead at this time. It would have been to surveil Marina. And with their kind of crazy focus on the KGB and the Russians, like almost obsessive, could make sense. So,
yeah, for sure.
That is all I have with Mr. Roca. Thank you, guys. I have not looked at the comments yet.
Yeah, we can get caught up a little bit here.
Thank
Joe,
you.
if you want to go through them.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. James.
What's up, James?
Yes, and Claude, Richard Helms was actually referred to a couple times, or a lot of times, in the 200 pages I read. He was the Deputy Director of Plans in 63, I believe, right? Lone Star Speaks by Sarah Peterson. Okay.
We'll check it out, Juan.
Yes, thank you. And I haven't seen what else. All right, so in researching Ray Roca, I found a really interesting video that I shared with you, Rob, on Angleton, the day he was fired.
This.
So this is the day after he was fired. I read it was Christmas Eve, 1974, and I think this is Christmas Day. Hold on here. Can you see it? Nope. All right.
And Mike makes a good point here.
Sure.
His signature slightly changed over the years. Mine certainly has. Oh, yeah. Quite possible.
Yeah.
All depends on how much of a hurry you're in as well. You know, how much effort you want to put into that signature.
Yeah.
You know, some people are just like, screw it. Scribble.
Or maybe why you don't want your signature to be obvious on some things.
Yeah.
Right? Why you intentionally make it not look like your usual. So this is James Hughes' Angleton. I believe it's the morning after, because they say Merry Christmas. The reporters are interviewing Angleton outside of his house, and it's a doozy, folks. He is faded here. He is drunk. We knew he was an alcoholic.
Drunk as a skunk. He's probably up all night.
The CIA only worked against the opposition. Regardless of what nationality came in contact with him, that's another matter. It did not happen in the United States.
Was your branch of the CIA
Yeah,
involved in the surveillance of American citizens here inside the United States?
absolutely not.
Did you resign completely
Bullshit.
voluntarily, or were you in some way induced to resign?
Pause.
I'm very unhappy to leave the agency.
Which means I was fired.
No, I don't.
Surveillance overseas.
Now, would you be careful, because I just shaved this moment. I've been up all night, literally on the phone. Now, what is
Sig,
this man has more?
look how faded he is.
Let me hit
What
the
is this?
It's an electronic device.
I see. I'm not familiar with him. I mean, it's much more perfected than anything we have in the agency.
Yeah, right.
Why did you resign?
I think the time comes to all men when they no longer serve their country.
As determined by whom?
By themselves and their superiors. It's not my nature. And I don't think I have any horns.
No, scapegoat. It's a
Well, I mean, it depends on. I mean, you said goat.
scapegoat.
No, I do not say ba.
Sir, did you have any association with the plumbers unit in the White House?
Absolutely not.
Was the agency involved in the kind of domestic surveillance that has been portrayed in the news reports?
Long pause.
Well, explain yourself.
The way it violated its charter.
No.
My feeling is that it has not.
Could there be a difference of interpretation?
But I'm speaking only on behalf of a group of men for whom I have the highest respect. And I can say, as to their activities,
All right. What do you think about that, Mr. Rob?
Ooh. I think they caught that dude creeping out in the morning. He should have stayed in the house.
I have one more minute, Rob. I'm skipping here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch.
I love this.
It's so great. This is where you could tell he's really kind of, maybe he's just sleep deprived. You never know.
Yeah.
will probably live longer than I will, and you'll learn the result of it.
Are you suggesting that these years in the CIA, you've watched President Nixon, Secretary Kissinger, and now President Ford take the United States down a misguided path?
Pause.
Long pause.
As I told you earlier, Mr. Shore, you kept me up too many hours to 3 a.m. watching public television. And I don't know whether I like you or don't like you for that reason. Obviously, when the nuclear stalemate, one assumes it is, that there are fixed parameters of relationships. I am not in the political business. I have seen no change in the Soviets at any time, whether it be in the Middle East or in the whole world that we consume, where the Soviets have ever deviated from their desire to take over
I noticed on this
the world.
I noticed on this Christmas Eve that your family is not with you. Is that a result of all these unhappy events?
Yes.
Sir, Dan asked you if you
God bless you.
I don't know if Merry Christmas is exactly.
Now we
No.
go.
Sounds ironic, but Merry Christmas.
That was ironic, but happy.
Merry Christmas. Good to see you.
All right. So, I guess it was
Wow.
Christmas Eve. So. Oh. Well,
I think Uncle Dave summed it up pretty good here. Self-medicating his guilt. Yes. Even drunk, he is giving non-denial denials. Yes, that's
Yeah.
very astute.
No more Lone Stars for that boy. Hold on.
Yes, cut him off, Aunt Udine. He needs no more.
Yes, and he is jacked up. So that is
I'm
funny.
all
And
jacked up on Mountain Dew.
let me see. So Angleton resigned after Seymour Hersh published a story in the New York Times about domestic counterintelligence activities under Angleton's direction. I believe that was the opening mail. Was it HP Lingual?
HT Lingual, yeah.
Yeah, against anti-war protesters, other domestic dissident organizations. Following this, resignation was announced Christmas Eve 74. 3 of Angleton's senior aides in counterintelligence, his deputy, Raymond Roca, executive officer of counterintelligence, William J. Hood, and Angleton's chief of operations, Newton Miller, were coaxed into retirement within a week of Angleton's resignation after it was made clear they would be transferred elsewhere in the agency rather than promoted. The counterintelligence staff was reduced from 300 to 80 people. Rob.
Yes.
That is it.
They cleaned house, folks. Out with the old guard and in with the new.
And I did not realize how many of Angleton's top aides how they were so loyal and that so many resigned within a week of his resignation, Little tidbits like that, right?
Yeah. If you think they wouldn't retaliate on Kobe even many years later, just saying, some people never forget. Well, thank you, Joe, for the he said bullshit there. Now we're going to go back to she said.
She said what?
She said what?
What?
Well, some of this you're going to be like, she said what? We're going to go back to New Orleans in the year of our Lord, 1967 for this one, Joe.
All right, Mr. Gaston.
And this is an interview by Andrew Mumu Chiambra of Betty Parrott. Now, Betty Parrott was informing to the Garrison investigation about a lot of things, including Carrie Thornley, Clay Shaw, and William Dalzell, which this is referring to. So, on March 31st, 1967, he says, I interviewed Betty Parrott and learned from her that she had an extremely close relationship with Bill Dalzell. They were banging. It seems that Bill Dalzell lived in her home for a certain period of time because they were banging. During the time that Bill Dalzell lived in her house, she said that he was involved with a group known as the Friends of Cuba. This group had its office in the Balter building. Members of this group included Sergio Arcacha Smith, Bill Craig, William Dalzell, Grady Durham, Louis Rebel, Bill Klein, Regis Kennedy,
the FBI agent,
a member of the FBI, an individual named Hoffman, Guy Bannister, and another individual named Easterling, which is very interesting because this throws back to when we talked about the book Reasonable Doubt by Henry Hurt. And there was a chapter in that book about this guy named Jake Easterling, who recounted a much earlier street fracas incident that wasn't videotaped or there was no arrest made. And this happened inside and outside of Horace Pena's bar, which is right down the street from Carlos Brinier's shop, like 2 doors down. Yeah. Okay. And which said, Oswald was in there mouthing off and this and that. And a bunch of these anti-cancer Cubans beat him up, and then they tossed him out on the sidewalk and kicked him around some more. And the letter that Oswald wrote to V.T. Lee on August 1st recounted an encounter with anti-Castro Cubans, in a fight and this and that. But the actual one that we know of, where he was arrested, didn't happen until August 9th. Okay? And this guy Easterling said a whole lot of other things in this interview with Henry Hurt. So if you haven't read it, and it might be located over in the Secret Book Depository on Locals, possibly. I encourage everyone to check that out and at least read the chapter on Jake Easterling. And the fact that she names an individual here named Easterling is very ironic.
Yeah.
Because it gives credence to his story. Okay. She said that although Dalzell was very secretive about the operations of his group, she said that from the conversations that she overheard, she learned that the group was involved in an undercover operation in conjunction with the CIA and the FBI that involved the shipment and transportation of individuals and supplies in and out of Cuba. So we're talking about smuggling, trafficking people, drugs, guns, equipment, things like that. She said that many times Regis Kennedy would come to the house and talk to Dalzell concerning the operation. She also said that many times Regis Kennedy came to the office in the Balter building to talk to Dalzell, and in turn, Dalzell and other members of the group visited Regis Kennedy at his office. She said that Regis Kennedy confirmed to her the fact that Clay Shaw is a former CIA agent who did some work for the CIA in Italy over a 5-year span. Now, she is giving this information in 1967, which is interesting because the whole Clay Shaw was a contract agent for the CIA didn't come out until when, Joe? Was it the HSCA or was it much later than that?
It might have been after the HSCA. Don't quote me on it, but it was much later than the Garrison trial, obviously, which was late 60s. So
yeah, but it's interesting. She knows this, which gives credence to her story that Regis Kennedy is the one that told her, hey, and him working for the FBI, how would he know that Clay Shaw was working for the CIA unless Regis Kennedy was working with the CIA as well? Because it says they were all working in cahoots.
Or Dalzell, right? And she was sleeping with him?
Yeah. So she said this group later moved from their office in the Balter building and moved into an office in the International Trade Mart, and then operated under the name of the Voice of Cuba or the Friends of Democratic Cuba. She said she does not know whether or not Clay Shaw had any connection with this group, and that she does not remember hearing Clay Shaw's name mentioned. She said that Bill Dalzell could tell us everything about the group and about the connection with Regis Kennedy and the CIA. She said that Dalzell has an open charge against him in New York, which she believes is gun theft. She said that John Bolden has the entire file on Bill Dalzell and can give us all the information we need in regard to this charge. She says for some reason she has heard Bill Dalzell's name mentioned quite often since the investigation started. She said that approximately 2 weeks ago, Dalzell made a trip into New Orleans and spoke to Steve Plotkin and heard that he had left town. So that's interesting. Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Spinks.
Thank you, sir. And
Appreciate
Dave,
you.
we were right. It was after HSCA, AARB.
Aha. Thank you,
Clay
Uncle
Shaw
Dave,
was
for the
contract agent.
clarification there.
And
So yeah, it wasn't until 30 years after the fact that when Betty Parrott told Garrison that the actual truth was revealed and that she was right.
Wow.
Crazy stuff.
And Rob, you said
Yes.
Italy, right? With Clay Shaw, obviously he was there. What if he knew because that was a while. I don't know what the year was. I don't
It was
know
in the
if
50s.
Roca was there until 55.
There
I
you
believe.
go.
I read. So
Yeah, interesting.
a nice little synchronicity thing there.
Tying it in.
Yes, we did not plan that, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
And then next up, I have a document from February 14th where he said, 1968, from Kent Sims, an investigator for the Garrison office. And this is a memo to Lou Ivon regarding an interview of one Fred Sewell, fleet and truck manager of Stevens Chevrolet, on Carondelet Street in New Orleans. On February 14th, 1968, Detective Kent Sims, in company with Detective Sal Scalia, Scafuza, interviewed Mr. Fred Sewell at Stevens Chevrolet and showed him a picture of one William Dalzell for possible identification as being the second man with Oswald in 1961 when he, Oswald, attempted to purchase a truck. Now, we've all heard this story about the name Oswald being on this paperwork from 1961 from this dealership in New Orleans, where they tried to purchase a bunch of trucks or Jeeps or something, and that there was another man with him. So Mr. Sewell observed the picture, stating that this man resembles the second man who was with Oswald on the above-mentioned occasion, but that he could not positively identify him as being such. Mr. Sewell went on to relate that the man who came over with Oswald had a scar over his left eye, that he didn't have a Spanish name, but that he was a Cuban type. Further, that this man was either an engineer or mechanic, as he was familiar with the working parts of a truck. Also, he was between 5'6" and 5'8", and well over 200 pounds. He was the athletic type in his mid-20s. So whoever was with Oswald was shorter, on the shorter side, but jacked. Because he didn't call him fat. If you're over 200 pounds and you're an athletic type, you got muscle. It's muscle, it's not fat. So it's a big dude. Big dude with Oswald. Did not have a Spanish name like Hernandez or something like that, which is interesting. And a scar over their left eye, which if we could match that up to somebody, that'd be interesting. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Hi, Trey. How are you?
Mr. Sewell further stated that the original bid was turned over to the FBI, and that he's under the impression that this office has a photostat of the same with the name of Oswald and the name of the other person who appeared with him. It was further learned from Mr. Sewell that he recalls that at a meeting he attended that a salesman who was at one time employed by Bolton Ford had mentioned that some Cuban-type person, along with a man believed to be Oswald, had also come to the Bolton Ford Company inquiring about a truck. Mr. Sewell cannot remember the identity of the salesman. So, very interesting stuff there. They're trying to tie Dalzell into being that other guy. There's no pictures of Bill Dalzell out there, at least that I know of. And if anybody out there that can find one, please email it to the lonegunmanpodcast@gmail.com, because I'd love to see it and get my hands on it and see if this dude has a scar over his left eye. Now, you ready for this one, Joe?
Ready.
Now, as you know, we got our hands, Joe, on a cache of Garrison investigation documents, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, I thought this was part of the Betty Parrott interview, and it may be, but upon further reading, I'm not sure. And you'll see why in a second. Okay? Hang on, I need to wet the whistle for this one.
Coke Zero, maybe?
Oh, no. Seltzer. Peach seltzer. Woo. Okay. Did I just knock my fucking... All right, I'm back. I accidentally hit the button. All right. So there is a conversation between someone named L and someone named A. Okay, it's very vague. So Betty Parrott is neither L or an A, so that's why it was making me think this is not an interview with Betty Parrott. But that's not the only thing that makes me think that, as will become more apparent. And it's just one page. It's one lone page, right?
Lone page gunman. Yeah.
Yes. But it was attached to the Betty Parrott thing, so I don't know if this is a William Dalzell, but that's a WD. There's no B. This is just A and L. All right, here we go. Well, I got whipped in the course of that ordeal. How do you mean? Well, just a minute. All right. I was invited for dinner, and we were served, I was served a meal. He was at one end of the 9-foot table, and I was at the other end. Just the two of you? Right. Well, there was a maid, and she was, and things got a little hairy. We got into a real funny situation in the bedroom, and all kind of, and I was asked to do some strange things that I'd never been asked to do before. I see. Like beating on the ass. Perform. Well, let's see. Well, here you go. Are you ready? Don't be bashful. That's all right. All righty. He said to shit in his mouth and pee in his mouth or all over him and things like that. And it was, really kind of traumatic as far as I was concerned. I had never come across anything like this before. I've heard about people like this, but I had never come into contact with one. Right. And it was, all of this was real strange. He had only one nipple, Joe. This man only had one nipple.
Interesting.
And I don't know why, but it was real queer to be effing all over the place. Really a masochistic kind of person. Yeah, go on. To me, but I understand from other people that have, well, how did the whips come in? You said you were threatened. He asked me to beat him with them. Oh, I see. And where did you actually do it? Well, yes, of course I did. And that's the end of it, folks. I don't know if this was referring to Clay Shaw. That would be my first guess. So you can see the kind of sadist, masochistic, sick, twisted nastiness that this dude was into, man.
And that is A or L?
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. Oh, man.
I mean, I want to say the L's Lou Ivan asking somebody.
I thought that actually too when I was thinking about what it could ask. It was like Lou Ivan, but do they usually use the last names or the first names if they just do one letter?
I don't know. Of course, the A could be Alcock. I don't know.
Sure too. One thing I thought interesting, Rob, long table, maid.
Yeah.
Now, I think we had mentioned this guy before, and of course, if you've seen the JFK movie, you saw Willie O'Keefe and Clay Shaw at two ends of an extremely long table, right? And it was kind of that awkward scene where they were
talking about whips and beatings, and
they did have the whips there. Yeah, I mean, or when they dressed up, right? Those four.
And of course, I should have gotten a picture, but in this picture was a file of a dude wearing like a black hooded robe, like in a house. It was just random. Didn't say who it was or anything else.
Like a robe, like the Klan robe?
It
A
kind of
black?
could have been, yeah,
Black? No, I'm just curious.
yeah, like a black hooded robe, like like a S&M dude. I don't
Well,
know.
I don't know either.
It
That's-
wasn't Clay Shaw. I do know that. But maybe it was just somebody modeling what they found in Clay Shaw's house or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was wild, wild, wild. And oh, by the way, Joe, guess where Bill Dalzell lived?
Decatur.
No, close. Dauphine Street, same street
Ah.
as Clay Shaw.
Ah, yes.
Couple houses down.
I was close. I was a good guess, Decatur. Yeah. And
So-
Parrott was living with Dalzell, or Dalzell was living with Parrott at some point, allegedly.
I think he was staying with her at some point. He was kind of like a move around a lot kind of guy. You know what I mean?
One of those playas of that time. Well, the chat absolutely loved it, by the way. We got a ton of laughing out louds I shared. And Sally said, "You're getting too good at the voices, Rob. It's like she's here." That is Betty Parrott. Sorry, bungled. We did not mean to lose anyone's appetite.
Yes.
It is close to getting lunchtime. It was the one-nippled man.
Did Clay Shaw only have one nipple?
I don't know. Another Sally. Thank God he's. Well, happy Father's Day to your grandfather, Sally. Hooks and handprints, am I right? I'm not getting this reference, but let's see. Did he say in the mouth? I don't know if they say that he deprecated on her or mouth. Wait, mouth or body?
Mouth.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not talking about under the coffee table either. I'm talking about right in.
The long table adds to the elegance of the meal. I guess that's a thing. Let's see. Mardi Gras costumes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure they were.
And all right. So that is very interesting. And we went from she said to he said back to she said. And that is very interesting here. And I wanted to bring this up, Rob, when you were talking about it, because it's actually a perfect segue into next week when you were talking about Easterling.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to say something else.
Like, what would you think I was going to say?
Well, that was the most horrible segue for what we have going on next week.
Oh, not the.
I mean,
the
Jesus Christ, Joe.
Not the butt stuff segue. the earlier New Orleans fracas, take one, right? With that Easterling talked about and why did that fracas, if it happened, the earlier fracas, and I believe that letter to VT Lee was on August 1st, Rob, because we talked about that in our presentation. Yep. So in theory, that would have happened before then, right? A day or two, think a couple days before then. If the letter's being written on the 1st, it's probably in
the Easterling account?
No, I'm just talking about the VT Lee letter.
Well, no, the VT Lee letter was written on August 1st.
That's what I meant. I said. No, sorry.
Yeah.
So, but in theory, the fracas would have had to happen before that. First fracas. First fracas. Take one.
Correct. The Easterling account of the fracas.
That's what I'm just saying, but not eloquently. And why, if that fracas happened, did it require a take two on August 9th with people filming, Rob? Well, because people weren't filming and it did not get any press the first time. So we had theorized that this was possibly a take one of that Oswald August 9th fracas.
Yeah, because it wasn't on video, and he wasn't arrested.
Yeah. Didn't do a PR campaign after on the
He got
radio.
his ass beat. That's all.
And the segue is next week we are going to have a guest on, and that is Mr. Alex Harris, the young but extremely smart photographic researcher, just everything, film. And I had met him at Lancer, and when we were having lunch, and I know he sent it to both you and me, Rob. We were having lunch on the Sunday afternoon before I flew back to New York, and he showed me what was possibly another take. Either it would have been take 2 of the Martin film, which we have gone into before, and we are going to view some of that video next week here on the Lone Governor podcast. And this video is not out there, but I'm going to save the rest for that. Go, Rob.
Yes, Joe Shaw, dining with young underage boys in Dallas.
Joe Shaw?
Yeah, you, Joe Shaw.
Why? That's not my thing.
You're dining with underage boys in Dallas.
Oh, yes.
Come on, man.
I'm sorry I missed that. I was like, what? I was like, I didn't.
Just admitted it.
I know. I thought you were going like butt stuff. I was like, what?
No.
Yes.
That's why I thought this. What a great segue into our next guest.
Right, a little long.
We're going to be on our bestest of behaviors, allegedly, next week. At least we'll try to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll be coming on. We'll be talking about some of what he's up to. He has some very interesting updates. And
he's
we're
doing
also
something very neat, allegedly, in Dallas. And we're trying to talk Alpha 66 into playing some parts, since he's local there.
Oh, and the reenactment. Yes.
Yes. He's already offered to be the guy that has the epileptic seizure in Dealey Plaza, but there's many other parts.
You know what I think would be great? If he would be the butcher man guy.
The apron man? That's what I said too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh.
He could definitely play that part. He could just, like I said, just go down Dealey Plaza. He could play Umbrella Man. He could play, Zapruder. He could just keep on moving down the way, as Alex changes out his cameras and everything.
Yeah. And so yeah, that'll be fun. And we're also going to do a little recap of some of what Rob and I researched and presented at Lancer in regards to John Thomas Martin, the person who filmed the Martin film.
Oh, that reminds me, Joe. Sure. I got a very interesting email at the Lone Gunman podcast email from, let me pull this up real quick.
It should be Tiny Dancers. She said she found a new Martin, so I was hoping that she was going to email with that details. So,
Marty Martin? Is that who you're referring to?
I don't know who it was. I just saw the comment.
Oh.
Her YouTube comment on something. Yeah, when you posted the update that we'd have it this morning, she said, well, I was able to be productive since I wasn't watching the Lone Gunman for hours on Friday night. And she found another Martin. So I was very interested. But I find Martins all the time. When you start looking for these things, I was taking a walk on the beach. I see a plaque, the Martin bird. I'm scrolling through things. There's a TV show that says Martin. When you start looking out for this, and obviously, I work in pattern and data analysis. These type of things stand out to me. And it's crazy.
Maybe it was sent to the quick hits. Let me check that real quick. Yes, it was. Sorry about that. I heard you guys were looking for John T. I tracked him down for you. All his info is in the PDF. Enjoy, from Jimmy James.
Whoa.
So,
you haven't told me about this until now, sir?
I just got the email 2 days ago.
All right, well, this is a TLG.
the more I look at it, I don't know if this is accurate from Jimmy James or not, because we actually did find this person that he's referring to. It's the Cape Coral, Florida, John T. Martin, with the Florida address.
Yes, I do remember that vaguely.
Yeah. The only problem is the associated emails for this one don't match up with family members or himself. Like with one email address is like Tony Hawk, 780 at Yahoo. I mean, I don't think, I don't think John T's into skateboarding, at 79 years old or whatever. And this thing is putting his age at 75, which is a little on the young side when knowing what we know about when he was born and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 addresses around Minneapolis, and I don't think this guy would be moving around that much.
One of them could be right.
And 2 of them in apartments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's an apartment liver. I mean, I think this guy's got a house somewhere.
Well, Rob, I'm not going to mention his name because he's undercover, but a known researcher is trying to help us out with this. We have not given up on our search for John T. Martin. And we did have information, Rob, that he was snowbirding during the summer, which some East Coasters will know. That means when you live in the kind of Northeast or top cold part of the country, you go down to Florida for the winter, for like January through March, April. And so Coral Gables, Florida doesn't seem like a Florida address doesn't seem crazy to me based on that information we got. Not saying it's that, just pointing out.
Right. It could be. It could be.
Right.
And it might be.
Yes.
I don't know. We got 2 phone numbers to call and see.
Are they working?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I will pass this along, our information, to our boots on the ground guy up in Minnesota, who could check out this information for us and see if it's legit or not. He ain't scared, folks, to go knock on the door or 2 for us. So we'll keep you posted as the world turns.
Yeah. Yeah. And so next week should be a fun episode. And, we're thank you for the over 40 people that are joining us right now on this Sunday morning. And we had fun time. I know that we will be back at the same bat time next week, allegedly. 7 p.m.
Worse than 6 bobbers. You yap worse than 6 bobbers.
Yes. So with that...
Just kidding, Joe. Say what you want to say, bud.
That was it. I was done.
Oh,
Looking forward to next week.
As am I. We're going to have a special guest on the show. We're going to be live with you Friday night. So we'll see you then. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Everyone enjoy your Sunday. Happy Father's Day.
Yes.
Hope you have a great one. And until next time, folks. Tiny Dancer, you hit me at the last second. It is the Lone Gunman Podcast at gmail.com. And if you can't remember that, you can always hit I'll get to it. Quick hits JFK at gmail.com. Either one, I'll get them. I'm the proprietor. And yes, we've tried, Uncle Dave, to get Uncle Ted on, along with you, sir. We hope to make that happen one day, for sure. I think it would be a hell of a show. But anyway, until next week, folks, for handsome Joey Scars Borelli, this your boy, the Triple B, Big Bad Bob. Until next time, folks, peace.
Peace. Have a good rest of your weekend, guys.
Yes, enjoy. Adieu. Aloha. Peace. Out.